Pivawuna, Nyakit, Janet, Halito, Sio, Gwena, Ansti Huntidish, Stongo, Madawaka, Kunamante, Hanapi, Yate, Kikadoos. Coming live from 1950 South Shepherd here in El Reno. I have my lovely niece today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Adriana.
Me, like we're not blood related, but I've known this little girl. Well, she's not a little girl no more. She's a young lady. I've known her basically her whole life. Like I go way back with her mom, way back with her grandma, like and her great grandma. Like it's pretty cool to have her join me today. So I just want to say thank you for being my eyeballs today. Would you like to tell us like a little bit more about like your brothers? How many brothers do you have?
4.
Four brothers. You're the only girl, right?
Yes.
Wow. And you're the oldest?
Yes.
You put the smack down when you have to? Well, thank you for joining me today. And, we got started a little bit early, of course. It's just me, only the lonely. And everyone else is headed to Clinton. They're having family wellness week in Clinton. They're gonna have the MMU there. They're gonna do sports physicals. They're gonna have dental there from IHS. They're gonna be giving shots. They'll have education there. JOM will be there handing out school supplies. All of health education, prevention, and of course, the world famous tour will be there. I believe there'll be other programs coming out there. I believe nutrition might be there. But yeah, there'll be other programs there at Clinton from 11 to 6 today. So if you need to get caught up on anything, go check them out today out there. They'll be out there all day. I couldn't make it. I only needed a few hours to get my 40, so it is what it is. And so, I thought it was important that we get on here today and just do what we do. Adriana decided that she would come help me out today, which I appreciate. And, it's just one of those things, just Patrick, Aaron, Desiree, Tatum, they all went to Clinton today. So Darian's on vacation. And Carmelo and Domingo are probably just now waking up, probably making each other bed or making each other breakfast. So, I'm assuming. So but yeah, so we had a good talking circle last night here at 1950. We had three new people come, which I was pretty excited about. Um, and it's just good. It's just a good feeling, when you have a great meeting. You have a great meeting and you're able, irons sharpen irons, right? I mean, I enjoy it. It just felt good. It felt good. I felt like I haven't been to that meeting in a couple of weeks. And it's just one of those things, that like it helps me understand a little bit more about my sickness. It lets me understand a little bit more about substance use disorder, and I felt, empowered today whenever I woke up and like was doing my morning meditation, my little morning prayer. Good morning, Ruth. Good morning. Good morning. What did she say, Adriana?
Good morning from Roseville, New Mexico.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's pretty cool. Hope you're having a good time out there. Hope you have a safe trip. But yeah, so we're gonna have a busy weekend. All Nations Res Recovery will be co-host in Watanga tomorrow at the Brother Terrell's memorial. Um, so yeah, we'll be in Watanga co-hosting, and then Sunday, I believe Domingo is going to go to Sealing. I think they're having his niece's graduation dance. So but yeah, that'll be Saturday and Sunday. So it picks back up. All the co-hosting, all the events that Res Recovery has lined up. So I believe we're invited. One of the invited Gord clans at Indian Hills, which is pretty cool. Kind of getting recognized. Across the state. That's pretty cool. And is there another comment?
Pivawana for Renee. Renee Romanis.
Okay, thank you, Pivot Wooden Up, Pivot Wooden Up. And you said that pretty good. You've been practicing that, haven't you? Even some of the people here still have trouble saying that. So I knew you wanted to be Cheyenne. Yeah. But yeah, good morning, good morning. Glad everybody can tune in. So yeah, we have, as far as like Res Recovery goes, like we have some events that'll be coming up soon. And it just feels good. That's kind of what the topic was last night at the meeting, was culture. And I think that kind of ties into our morning meditation this morning too, about culture. I was exposed to it, very young. And it just, when you're a kid, you're trying to find all these different things, that are new in your life. And, like there's just some things that just pulled me away from my culture. Like there's no way to explain it. It just wasn't, being native just wasn't cool enough whenever I was a kid. So now that I've, kind of found my way, I guess you could say, I understand how important our culture is, the exposure to our kids, the exposure to the next generation. Do we have any more comments?
Good morning from Natalie.
Good morning, Nat. Yeah, like I didn't see her. Is that it?
Yeah.
Well, it's I like the topic last night. It was just about culture. You hear all these different kinds of different cultures. Gang culture. Drug culture. Like there's so many different like trends that become a culture. And I would have to say I got caught up in all of those. So being able to be sober today and understand, like I'm all these other tribes, but I was raised Cheyenne. And I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud that of the community that I'm from. Thomas, Oklahoma. Very proud to be where I'm from, and I feel blessed that I was exposed to a lot of things. I remember being about 10 years old and going out there and sweating at my Uncle Duck's. And Uncle Charlie, Kenny Boy, Seth, like there's a few others, but I mean for the most part, like I remember getting in that sweat, and I was having trouble breathing, all the things that a little kid does when they go in a sweat. But I just remember like feeling connected. And I didn't have a lot of that in my life. Predominantly like a male, or like wasn't a lot of males, in our community. And so just being exposed to what these men do, and seeing what like hearing their prayers and hearing the things that they did, and hearing those songs, like, man, like, like that was my solution. But as a kid, you don't realize it. But today, like, it's just one of those things where I got to go sample all these other cultures, right? Like, I got to try to be from all these other cultures, and I never felt like that was my place. So today, I'm very proud that we get to go gore dance. We get to take part in ceremony. We get to hear our language spoke, like, and it's just one of those things, that I like to identify as something that makes me feel better about myself, as my culture. So, do we have any more comments?
Good morning. Good to see you. Good words, prayers for the people, Patrick.
Hey, all right, Patty. Good morning, people.
Good morning, Misty.
Misty Hickson.
Good morning, Julia.
Tartsa.
Osio.
Wait,
I don't know how to say that.
Osceola.
By Kimberly.
CO Kimberly.
I don't know how to say that.
CO. OCO. Yeah. So, I got my niece Adriana here. She was nice enough to come and assist me today. She came, she's my eyeballs today. So I just want to say thank you to her again. And so yeah, I figure we might as well just jump off into it. So go ahead and click on the banners, and then you can put and then go ahead and read it for me, please.
Our fathers gave us many laws which they had learned from their fathers. These laws were good. Chief Joseph. The Creator gives us many laws to live by. These are different than the laws of man. The laws of the Creator are designed for us to live in harmony and balance with ourselves and each other. These laws are about having freedom and happiness. Our elders teach us these laws about how to treat each other, laws about how to treat and respect our Mother Earth, laws about the environment. Our Great Spirit teach me the laws of the unseen world. Today I pray you open my eyes so I can better see the red road.
Aho, Adriana. Thank you for reading that. When it says, we were taught these laws, these good laws by our fathers, and they were taught by their fathers. Like, I kind of missed out on that, kind of, a lot of blank spaces, where, my dad, I was a daddy's boy. I'm my dad's only child, whereas my mom has 6 kids, but I was my dad's only child. And, watched him struggle. I watched him struggle most of my life, most of his life, like, he went to Vietnam, um, suffered from PTSD, had Agent Orange, and then you add addiction on top of that, but I remember there were times he tried, I could definitely tell he was trying, struggling, even as he struggled, he still wanted to try to teach me better. But like it's easy to talk a good game, right? Like, we can all talk a good game. But it was different because I seen, where his actions, what he would do when he was drunk. Like the things he would get mad about, or the things that he'd be fighting around about, or and basically it was just like street politics type stuff, like bunch of old schools, trying to beat each other up, but there was some good things, that my dad did leave me with, I spoke about that yesterday. When I said my uncle was trying to buy me a pipe one time, he's trying to get me a pipe. And my dad was just kind of like, no, you need to wait until that's the most important thing in your life. And he was right. He was completely right, because I had no business, trying to, like I would only be good for that 1 week. I'd only be Cheyenne for that 1 week. And then, as soon as the ceremonies were over with, like I would just go right back to what I was doing, and I would have to say that was my foundation, was our ways. That's where I felt, that's where I felt at home, and it just seemed like I didn't have a lot to fall back on, as far as like being taught the right way, being exposed to all the good things. But, like for the most part, my dad always took me with him to sweat, like he always tried to include me in things like that after he sobered up, after he got sober, whenever I was about 14. That was probably about 1994. He tried to sober up. I was 14 years old, and it just kind of seemed like where he tried to be my dad then, like I had so many resentments that, where he set the drink down, I picked it up. And, like that's kind of how, I got started. I can remember the first time going home and him seeing me drunk, and the disappointment and the way it made him cry, and I could tell myself, that I had to justify it, to make myself feel better. I remember telling myself, like, well, that's what you used to do to me. That's what you taught me. Like I kind of like threw it back in his face, like, you were an alcoholic my whole life. And now that I get the opportunity, I'm gonna show you how it feels, and it was very unhealthy, for a kid. I'm 14 years old coming home drunk. Hell, I'd have beat the hell out of me. You know what I mean? But, luckily my dad wasn't that type of dad. And slowly he would try to talk to me. He would try to talk some sense into me. He did have like some good things to say to me. He would talk about, what it meant to be a dog soldier, what it meant to have a pipe, what it meant to do these things that we're not just Cheyenne just one week out of the year, we're Cheyenne every day. And if there's one thing about my process that I figured out is that, there's no going around those things. You can't just step over those things. There's no going around it. Like the principles and the values that he taught me, are that we are Cheyenne every day. Whatever tribe you are, you're that every day. You can't pick and choose when you get to be those things. You know, sometimes I think, did I pick this way or did this way pick me? I think about the way my dad explained things, how things were between him and his dad. My grandpa Franklin Botone. After my grandpa Franklin left my grandma Ruby Bushyhead, Ruby Botone, whatever, Ruby Sheridan, whatever you want to call her. After he left my grandma, which he had my dad Johnny, my aunt Aaron, my uncle Crow, and my uncle Bobby. All Botones, and I guess my grandma caught him, doing his thing or whatever, like messing with somebody else, and she beat him up with the frying pan and chased him out of the house. And he takes off, he took off to Arizona. He took off to Arizona, and he had 8 more kids out there. Went out there and he had 8 more kids, and he, the 4 that he had with my grandma weren't his only kids here in here in Oklahoma. I remember meeting a Kenneth Botone, that looked exactly like my dad, which was crazy. But you know, there's just I think about, you know, like I always wonder what kind of man my Uncle Franklin was, because the picture that I seen of him, he was shoeing a horse. I guess he was a farrier, and he was shoeing a horse, and he had on a bunch of like turquoise and silver jewelry while he's like putting this shoe on this horse. You know, it just always like made me wonder what kind of guy he was, you know. And but when my dad went to Vietnam and he came back, I guess my Aunt Erin went to Phoenix and she went and got my grandpa and she brought him back to Oklahoma to see my dad. And they were like at a 49 or something like that. And my dad and my grandpa started getting drunk together. And my dad said that my grandpa started being mean to him like when they were kids, you know. And my dad was a completely different, you know, completely different man when he came back from Vietnam, which, he was real violent, I guess, from what I was told. So I guess my grandpa Franklin kind of like starts disrespecting him, and my dad beats up his dad, you know, like he like put his hands on him, you know, put his paws on him, and you know, busted him up, I guess, you know. So I guess my grandpa didn't want anything to do with my dad, and he goes back to Arizona. And you know, like all his kids out there, his 8 kids, I guess he had seven daughters and one son out there in Arizona, and they're half Navajo. And I don't know, like my dad always felt bad about that last interaction with them, because I don't know how many years later that Franklin, my grandpa Franklin, stumbles out into the road in Phoenix, and he gets hit by a truck, and he gets drugged for like 2 blocks. You know, so my dad always felt bad about that. And you know, I kind of think like, what if he was able to teach my dad these natural laws and to practice these principles? But then again, I also think, well, damn, he was like suffering from the same sickness that I am. You know, we just kind of like lost out on all of that, you know, that knowledge of him being able to come back from substance use and do something good for all of his kids, you know. And so and I guess his dad, you know, my grandpa Franklin's dad, you know, I hear nothing but great things about him. You know, I hear some good things about him, you know. And my grandma Blanche Jackson, you know. So I don't know, there's just so many like I think about like, well, who I had to turn to after I lost my dad whenever I was 23 years old. You know, that's when I lost my dad. He was 49 years old. You know, he didn't get to make it to 50 years old. You know, he was 49 years old when he passed away. So, but I think about, like who I had to turn to, who else did I have left? You know, I have my Uncle Charlie, I have my Uncle Robert, I got my Uncle Eddie. At the time I had my Uncle Billy, but I really don't see them a lot because I live here in El Reno. I see my Uncle Robert though all the time, but he passed away last year, and like I I don't question, what God has done in my life and the way that he has provided a way for me. So, like I don't have no dad. I don't have no like a lot of uncles left to teach me, this way. So I catch myself more and more in prayer. I catch myself more and more like turning to the creator for, all the little things. Like, like of course all the big things, but it's like I turn to Mahio, I turn to the creator, the great spirit, the great one. I turn to him for just about everything today. There's not a lot of things that happen in my life that I haven't spoke to him about. So like tomorrow I get to celebrate my granddaughter's first birthday. Nova Ray Jean. She's turning 1 years old. My daughter Brianna, her and her baby. We're gonna be celebrating her life tomorrow. And in my addiction, none of these things were possible. And I love the fact that I can honestly say, that both of my granddaughters, both of my grandkids, Alani Fernanda Lorda Russell, and Nova Ray Jean Aldaco, neither one of them have ever seen their grandpa high or drunk. So now it's like I get this opportunity. When I got nephews, I got a son, I got an older son, he's about 27. I got a 10-year-old son, and I got nephews that look up to me. Now it's like I get this opportunity to talk about these issues that plague our people. I get to talk to them about some of the things that nobody ever talked to me about. Some of the emotions that I felt, some of the situations that I came up against, and some of the things that really troubled my life. And I made a bad decision. But I feel like that's the great thing of the creator's work today. Because I can't take blame. I can't take credit for anything that's been going good in my life. I put in the work and I let the creator handle the results. So it's been at times I feel lonely. When it comes to seeking advice or needing an elder's wisdom, or so I catch myself. If you ain't got those type of connections, turn to the creator. And he showed me a way that I never knew was possible. And and if you do have them elders, you do have, you got my Uncle Chester, like these different ones. We have a lot of great men in our community. We got a lot of great men from our tribe. Some of them are crazy, but my Uncle Hammer, Junior, he's crazy. He gives me hell, but he always got something good to say to me too. And like you just gotta, you know, you gotta be ready to, to catch a little hell, but in the end, it's always worth it. Don't take advantage. You have a wealth of knowledge right in front of you. Learn how to have these talks. Learn about that knowledge, because it's slowly getting lost every day. And I was thinking about that. There was a question that I seen last night when I was looking on Facebook, because I can watch Facebook Reels for hours, till my phone dies or whatever. There was something that I seen about like identifying with this sickness. I remember what it was. Like this guy was bragging, like, what? I actually tried to talk to a girl in the store the other day. And he said the weird thing about that, he said, is I always used to want to talk to all these girls. He said, but I never had the nerve to gather up, and get brave and say something to them, and not even like hit on them or anything, but just to say hi. He said, but he said, let me see a streetwalker. And he said, I'd have a couple dollars, like ready to, like he said, and there was no fear at all. And he said, because he said, I didn't want the doctor. He said, I wanted the patient. He said, because I can identify with that sickness. And I don't know, just the way he put it, like, made me like really, really think about how I identify with my sickness today. Am I still using? No, like that's not part of, my sickness today. Today, my sickness is centered in my mind. Today, this sickness shows up in places that I you know, I never expected. You know, like this sickness is a real thing, and if you're not doing something to, you know, of course you need to stop drinking, stop using drugs. Of course, you know, that's a big part of getting sober. But when you get into recovery, because I've understood like there's a difference between sobriety and recovery. Like I've been sober before, but I was miserable. You know, and since I've been in recovery, like I actually can identify when my sickness shows up. And you know, like I think that goes along with today's reading is understanding that natural law of when I'm getting in my own way, when I'm getting in the creator's way. So I mean, to me, you know, it there's little things that because I watch all these people in recovery, right? Like all these like famous people. They're, to me, they're famous. Yeah, because they're on Facebook Reels. But you know, like there's so many instances where like they say some great things that and that was one thing that I heard last night was identifying my sickness. You know, and finding the natural law and understanding how the bad things in my life happen for me, not to me, so that I can use them today to help another alcoholic or addict, you know, help somebody else suffering from substance use, you know, identify their sickness. And that's one of, you know, one of the great things about, you know, being of service. So, Miss Adriana, can we start from the last comment that you read? Will you tell me their name first and then read their comment? Yeah, scroll up as far as you got to.
Ray, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for tuning in.
Leslie, good morning, big brother.
Good morning, Les.
Patrick, HK, it's always good to hear your words. Haha.
Aho, brother. Aho.
Cash, good morning, brother Barry.
Good morning. Good morning.
David, good morning.
Good morning, Stongo David.
Leslie, good morning, big brother. Yep, I just missed my dad too. Renee, good morning.
Good morning, Renee.
Nadina.
Yes,
good morning.
Nadina.
Good morning, Barry. Have a great day.
Good morning, Nadina. Is that it?
Yeah.
Is there anything you would like to say?
No.
What grade are you going to be in next year?
12th.
Wow, you're an old lady. I can't believe that. Wow. You make me feel old, Adriana. How old your little brother? I mean, how old's Milk were you going to be?
Anthony?
Yeah.
16.
Canelo. And he's an old man too. Well, that's pretty cool. Pretty cool. You're gonna be a senior. Are you still playing basketball?
Yes.
All right. So you got what? 2 state rings?
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Pretty cool. You gonna dunk it this year? Well, you know, we'll be there to support you. That's pretty cool, Adriana. Well, we appreciate everybody that was able to tune in, you know, so we appreciate all the comments. You know, we will see you Monday, so you can click on it once. And we will see you next week, I hope.